Hello, welcome to the Raconteur Hour. So essentially, a lot of you guys were asking me during my first live stream if I could have a separate session for regaling tales and stories and adventures, which I started to do during the live, but was taking up too much time. So I've dedicated an extra session every now and then, and I'm dubbing it the Raconteur Hour. Welcome. I think I've got a lot of tales from traveling, a lot of different stories and things like that. And I think for the first one, it might be nice to talk about maybe the first time I went away traveling, which was in 2015. So a little bit of context and backstory for that session. I was 19, 20 years old, I think, and I was massively inspired by people like Jack Kerouac and very much getting into Bob Dylan for the first time. Kerouac is a guy who used to hitchhike all across America and stuff like that. Also, I was listening to a lot of Delta blues music and really fascinated by that time when, you know, people weren't able to find work, and musicians, especially like Robert Johnson, Sunhouse, Muddy Waters, etc., traveled a lot on account of their race as much as their work. Hopping trains and living on the road with just their guitar and their life. So very cool existence to me, appealed to me a lot at the time. So I kind of wanted to see how I could do, how if that was still possible in the modern world. Blooming hot here. So I wanted to see, so I went out for the first time traveling on my own when I was 20 years old. And I didn't take an amplifier, I took just my guitar, a tent, and I wanted to see how far I could get. I didn't really expect to get much beyond northern France, but when I first made it across to France on the ferry, I didn't take much money with me. I was camping and busking, and I just hitchhiked from where I was living in England at the time and taken the ferry across. I didn't really speak any French at the time. I bought a phrase book on the ferry on the way over, and that was really the only French I knew. And I remember I was camping in farmers' fields for the first few days, and I learned solely the phrases like, sorry, I'm just passing through, or okay, I will leave immediately. I learned phrases for this in case of like a dodgy encounter with a farmer who was angry at me being on his land or whatever. But the very first time I came across on the ferry, when I got there, it was 10:30 at night and it was raining. So when I first came across, it was 10:30 and it was pissing it down with rain, and it was dark, and I didn't know where I was going. And as much as I tried to hitch a lift from the people who had just left the ferry, they wouldn't, no one stopped. So I thought, okay, right, great. Well, I just followed the cars up the road. I don't know how many people have been to Dieppe or walked out of that ferry port, but as you come out, you've got a choice between left and right, and left goes up a hill. So I went up the hill and trudged up there with all my stuff I had on my back. Nearly forgot my water, which was very important because I had nothing. So I needed water for cooking and cleaning and stuff like that. But I remembered that, got it back. Trudged up the hill, and there was like nothing around. And I was like, where am I gonna set up my tent in the rain? And I wandered into like a building site, and I thought this could work. It's a bit discreet. I can chill here easily. But then I thought, oh, what if the builders come to work first thing in the morning at like 5 a.m. and find me in my tent? That's going to be like a really horrible situation to deal with. So instead, I went back towards the road, and there was like this 6-foot fence over stopping people from crossing to the edge of the cliff top, overlooking the sea. And so I just threw my stuff over the fence, damaged my guitar in the process, but jumped over the fence, pitched up my tent in the dark, and after I pitched up my tent, I went to have like a little explore, and I saw another tent further away in the bushes, and I was a bit like, oh shit, so there's other people here as well. Oh no, and theirs was a lot more well hid than mine. Mine was just kind of out in the open on top of the cliff. And I thought, okay, doesn't matter, I'm going to bed. And then I got into my tent, and all I could hear, I heard some people coming back, and they were speaking French, so I didn't understand exactly what they were saying, but I could tell from the context and the odd word here and there that I did know. They were saying, hey, who's in there? And I was lying in my tent, I could hear the rain pattering, and I just stayed there like silent, like didn't want a confrontation. It was late at night, didn't speak French, wasn't sure what was going to happen, didn't want to get robbed even. And I just heard them say again loudly, like, "Who's in there?" Like kind of angry, and I just lay there, totally silent. And I was like, "Oh God!" And all I could hear was the pattering of the rain on top of my tent. And nothing happened. I was pretty scared they were going to like let down my tent in the middle of the night or something like that, but they didn't. The next morning I woke up and I discovered that I had actually camped in the middle of loads of tents that went out along this sort of peninsula type thing along the cliff, and there were tents everywhere and people everywhere, and I gave them a sort of a cheery bonjour first thing in the morning as I was washing up my porridge pot. And I started thinking, okay, how am I going to get out? Because the fence was like so high and the ground sloped off down below on the side that I'd come, which I hadn't realized last night because I just jumped down. So I couldn't really get out too easily. So I started wandering down the cliff towards the tents thinking, how do I get out of here? And then these guys started yelling at me from the other side of the fence, like, where are you going? Where are you going? But in French. And then somebody repeated it in English. Who are you? Where are you going? And I said, I'm trying to get out of here. And they said, come over here, we'll help you get out, we'll help you, catch your stuff and help you climb over and so on and so forth. And yeah, the guys, one guy that spoke English was like, what the hell are you doing here? Like, we used some English guy like camping amongst what actually turned out to be a refugee camp, because this was around the time of the refugee crisis. So they were all from like across the Middle East and stuff like that. And they were trying to get across to England, but everywhere was like this at the time. This huge camp in Calais, camp there in Dieppe. And I got talking to these guys and they were like, what are you doing? And I said, what are you doing? I said, I'm traveling in France. He said, and where are you going? And I said, I'm going to the south of France. And he said, why are you going to the south of France? Like, this English guy, like, what are you doing? Why would you leave England? And I said, I've never been there before, why not? As I left the refugee camp, I was looking for a decent place to hitchhike. And I found somewhere that kind of worked. It was like sort of a wide T-junction. I stood at the edge of that. And there was a petrol station in front of me just down the road, so I was trying to catch all the cars. There wasn't really a lot around. Dieppe seemed to be a very small town with not a lot going on. And so I stood there hitching, and every time people went past, people either went no like that, or people would go, they kept signaling like that. And I was like, what does that mean? What does that mean, Finally, one guy stopped, and he had his family and his dog, and their car was all loaded up with holiday stuff and things like that. And he didn't speak a word of English. I really didn't speak any French at all. But I managed to understand that I was in a bad place for hitchhiking, and the one word that I kept on picking up that he kept saying over and over was là-bas. He was saying, là-bas, là-bas, c'est bon, là-bas. And I was saying, là-bas, là-bas is good, yeah, là-bas. And he said, oui, oui, oui. I said, okay, right, so I'll go to là-bas. I'll leave Dieppe and I'll go to là-bas, and when I get to là-bas, I'll be able to hitchhike from there because it's a better place to hitchhike from. And so I wasn't sure. Sometimes when you hear something and when you see something written in French or any foreign language, what you see written doesn't necessarily, it's not how you think it would sound. So I was trying to work out what là-bas could be. I saw a few things like lavage and libre. And now I know these words, so it's a bit easier. But I also saw some road signs that had in speech marks, là-bas, written on them, loads of French, loads of dates and numbers, and then là-bas in quotations. I thought, great, this is the way to là-bas. And it was this country road stretching off, going down and down, down, way into the distance for kilometers and kilometers, and there was nothing around, just fields. And so I started walking down this road. My bag was probably about as hot as it is now, like 23, 24 degrees. Walking. I walked for, I don't know, it must have been about 15 Ks with my bag on my back, and hours. I walked for 2 or 3 hours and got nowhere. No, couldn't see it. I realised eventually that there was no town on this road. I wasn't getting anywhere. I'd seen no more road signs to indicate I was going towards là-bas. And so I wasted the whole day walking all the way down this road. Saw some cows, which was nice. They sort of chased me a little bit. And then walked all the way back again. And it was evening by the time I got back to Dieppe, and finally got a lift out of there. Some guy came by. Now that was the family that was loaded up with their whole family and all their possessions and a dog and stuff. And they moved the dog over onto someone's lap, and I got into the back, and they finally took me out and dropped me off at a better spot. to hitchhike from, which I was writing in my journal as I was in the car. And one day I'll write that up properly and publish it somewhere. But I found out about a month later in the south of France, when I was chatting with a friend down the beach, someone I'd met, I found out that là-bas actually just means over there. So when the guy first stopped and he was saying, no, you need to go over there. Over there is better for hitchhiking, over there. Not go to the town là-bas. So I wasted a whole day absolutely for nothing. And I also figured out how to hitchhike subsequently. It's better to stop on the motorway and the petrol stations. And as far as a bit of advice for you, as far as getting out of small towns, also I wasn't even in Dieppe. I turned the wrong way out of the ferry station. Up the hill was not the way towards the town. And if it had been daytime when I got there, I would have realized that because I would have seen it in the distance. And yeah, a bit of advice for hitchhiking, it's better to, if you want to get out of the small town that you're in or get out of any town that you're in, you can stand on any street corner, find a map first of all, figure out which road it is that you need, like A5, A2, whatever, in France, E18. Get a piece of cardboard, indicate to people where you're going, because during that whole trip, I never did that. I just had this one phrase. They said, où allez-vous, where are you going? I'd say, je voudrais aller vers le sud, which just means I'm going to the south. And they'd say, où est in le sud? Which town south of here are you going to? I'd say, le sud. I'd take out my map of France and go, like that, or I'd say, le sud, le sud. Anyways, it helps to write the name of the road you need. Someone can always take you 5 minutes in their car to drop you in a good place. And once you're on the motorway, you want to be in like a petrol station. Stand at the entrance to the petrol station. People see you on their way in, they have some time to think about it, or on the way out at the petrol station, doesn't matter too much. And that's the best way to hitchhike. But I had to learn this out, I had to figure this out myself. No one taught me how to do that, because when I was 20 years old on my own, on my first busking trip. So I thought that would be a good story to tell. This story, là-bas, would be a good one to start off this whole raconteur thing. And tune in next time for the next tale. I've got plenty of them. Some of them less interesting than this, some of them much funnier and some of them more desperate. So have a lovely day and thanks for joining. Bye.